Um, Thank you so much for being here. This is calling to order the Town of Atherton City Council regular meeting, May 21st, 2025 at 6 p.m. in the council chambers at our beautiful town center. We're going to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty, justice for all. May I have the roll call,
President would have the
please?
same perspective.
Councilmember Hawkins?
Here.
Councilmember DeGolia?
Yes.
Councilmember Widmer?
Yeah.
Vice Mayor Holland?
Here.
Mayor Lewis?
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to just deviate from our regular agenda for just a few minutes. As you all know, a couple of weeks ago, we had a tragic accident, and a community member was killed riding a bicycle. Our vice mayor is very close to the family, and on Sunday, she had organized the most beautiful memorial service held at the Arriaga Recreation Center in Menlo Park. And it was more than standing room only. There were rows, three people thick out the door. And I just wanted to acknowledge her heart and let her say a few words about Dylan Taylor.
I'll try and do it without crying. So, Dylan Taylor, Menlo Park might claim him officially, but I think today Atherton should claim him too. He worked in our town. He was an educator for our special needs kids, played adult softball and ultimate frisbee with our residents, and he was our kids' beloved coach. Just last month, he taught our kids how to use fire extinguishers at our Earth Day Festival. He was a vibrant member of our community, and we all miss him so much already. At the memorial this weekend, Dylan's father, Mike, had a beautiful message that I wish to reiterate today. That is that I hope we all can honor his memory by trying to live our lives more like Dylan. Dylan believed in community. He was a generous giver who put others first. He would go out of his way to help somebody. He loved being around people, made everyone feel special. He was the first person to raise his hand if anyone needed volunteers. He smiled all the time, even when it was hard. Brought people together to play, to create joy and connection. He was a coach, a teacher, a friend, an uncle, a son, and a brother. I hope we can all honor his legacy by trying to be more like Dylan. His too short life, Dylan Taylor made a lasting impact on this community, and he will not be forgotten.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so on following our agenda, our next item is presentations. And I understand we have a proclamation that's going to be read by our Chief National Police Officer Memorial Week. Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Chief. Okay, our next item is time for public comments. That's a time when any member of the public may come to the dais and state their name. You can speak for 3 minutes on items that are on the agenda, or a minute if you're wanting to speak about something not on the agenda. Any member of the public come up? Yes, Marjorie.
Hello again. Madam Mayor, council members, city manager, good evening. My name is Marjorie Ruiz Hidalgo. Thank you for the opportunity this evening to introduce myself. I am your new, emphasis on new, PG&E local government affairs representative for the 21 jurisdictions in the peninsula. This means that I am your day-to-day single point of contact, and this includes department heads and senior staff. I started in late April, and I am still learning the job. And I just want you to know that I will do my utmost to help serve your constituents. If you have any questions about anything PG&E, please contact me. I've given most of you business cards, Vice Mayor. I will follow up with one for you and for you, council member. A little bit about the team. I am part of a whole PG&E team based out of the San Carlos Service Center. So this includes gas, electric, crews, emergency response, service planning, vegetation, which I know in Atherton, we experience a lot of management challenges, and everyone responsible for the customer experience. I'd love to meet up and set up some time individually to hear your concerns, your comments, touch base, connect, basically just know one another. Thank you for the opportunity to introduce myself tonight.
Thank you, Marjorie. Good luck in your job. It's a big one for sure. Next item on our agenda is disclosure of ex parte communications. The city council members should disclose any communications that they have had on the agenda items at this time. Any member of the council have? Yes, Stacy, Vice Mayor.
I've been in touch with members of the Safe Routes to School community at Encinal and at Selby Adelante.
Okay.
Selby Adelante.
Sylvia. Anyone else? Okay, thank you.
I've been in touch with a number of residents. Item 7.
Number 9.
8's the one.
Number 8, yeah,
Okay.
related to bike lane pedestrian.
Okay. And Councilmember Whitmer.
I've corresponded back and forth with a number of people on both the bike lanes and as well as the setback requirements.
Okay. There, okay. The next item is what I think is a very important item, but we don't ever go through it because it's chock full of information, is our departmental written reports. I urge council members and residents to read it. It is full of great information, and there's all this scheduled, like with dates, updates on what we're doing, what staff is doing, and a lot of questions can be answered if you kind of read it. But it's full of good information. So that's my little thing about that report. Oh yes,
One thing that we should note from that report is that the town received its certification from HCD for its housing element.
thank you, City Manager, for saying that. That is exciting. Can we, do we pop open some champagne or, Patty? Yay. Nice work, guys. So the next item is the report out of closed session. Our city attorney, Mona Ibrahimi.
Thank you, Mayor Lewis. Council. The council met in closed session on 3 matters. There was no public comment in advance of that, and the council provided direction to staff on all 3 items.
Thank you so much. The next item is our consent agenda. It's items 1 through 4. And typically, the consent agenda is passed in one motion. I'll open it up for the public if any member of the public has a comment or a question on the consent agenda. Seeing none, I'll bring it back to council. Are there any members of council who has a, yes, Anthony, thank you. There's a member online who has a question for the consent agenda.
Mr. Mike Swire, you have 3 minutes to make your public comment.
Yeah, hi, this is a general public comment. I had my hand up earlier, but it's not a consent item and it refers to the two bike and safe streets things. Is it okay if I go now?
We have that agendized for later in the meeting, so it would be more appropriate at that time.
Okay, but it was also a general public comment about the what Stacy was talking about earlier.
Feel free, thank you.
I think it's fine if he goes now.
Great.
Okay,
thank-
Mike, go ahead. You have the floor.
Okay, thanks so much, Mayor Lewis and members of the council. Mike Swire, I serve as chair of the CCAG Bike and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, but I'm speaking on my own behalf tonight. First of all, I want to thank Vice Mayor Holland for her kind words earlier. I've been to a number of council meetings, unfortunately, after tragedies like this, and I think this is the first time that I've heard a council member directly address it proactively. I understand not always do we know the victims, but I think given that these things are largely within the town's control, it's important to address them and acknowledge them. So I'm calling real quick to make sure that we don't forget about Dylan. 2 weeks ago, he was hit by a garbage truck driver and killed in front of Encinal Elementary School in Atherton. He was biking to work like many of the residents in the town do. Many others would like to bike to work, but are too scared to do so. In commuting by bike, Dylan was reducing auto congestion on the streets, air pollution in the neighborhoods, and greenhouse gases that destroy the planet. Unlike those who drive, Dylan didn't have a steel cage to protect him from 60,000-pound garbage trucks and other vehicles speeding through our neighborhoods. Instead, Dylan relied on the town of Atherton and its leaders to design streets that are safe for residents who walk and bike. Allegedly, Dylan was in a bike lane when the driver hit him. Unfortunately, this was an unprotected or Class 2 bike lane that relies on driver behavior to keep them safe, despite the abundance of drivers that believe that rules against texting or drinking while driving don't apply to them. It's possible that a protected bike lane in this location could have saved Dylan's life. Thus, I encourage the town council to remember Dylan later tonight and in the future when you make decisions around street safety. Yes, protected bike lanes often require more space on our streets, perhaps necessitating removal of parking or a car travel lane. Parking in multiple travel lanes improve convenience for those who drive. Protected bike lanes, however, like the ones that you debated recently on El Camino, can save lives. In my opinion, we should prioritize limited public right-of-ways for the safety of those who don't drive over the convenience of those who do. I encourage the town to do everything it can to make the streets safer for those who don't drive, especially the kids trying to get to school. This includes supporting protected bike lanes on El Camino, even if it means short delays for those who do drive. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Okay, going on to our consent agenda, bringing it back to council. I was going to ask if council had any questions on the consent agenda. Okay, seeing none, I'll bring it back for, can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda items 1 through 4?
So moved.
Thank you, Councilmember DeGoya, a second. A second on by Councilmember Widmer. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? Any abstentions? Motion passes with a majority. We're going to open a public hearing as our next agenda item. It's item number 5. We're introducing and waiving the first reading of an ordinance amending sections 3.16.240 and 3.16.280 of the Atherton Municipal Code relating to purchasing. So I will turn it over to our city attorney. Mona, I believe you're going to provide more information on that. Were you ready for that?
I can take it.
You can take it.
Yes.
It's in the agenda that you would do the readout.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Lewis and Council. The item before you tonight is presented for 2 reasons. First of all, the state law has amended the overall contract limits that would allow a local agency that adopts the uniform the California Uniform Public Construction Cost Accounting Act to be able to enter into public works contracts within those limits without going through a formal competitive bidding process, but still nonetheless following certain processes to ensure the best possible contract for the town. Under these, there's strict accounting requirements that also are required to be complied with. So part of today's action simply brings our regulations in line with that. The other action tonight refreshes the resolution that we would send to the state that demonstrates that the town of Atherton has opted into being able to utilize the act in this case. So those are the two actions before you, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Okay, I'll open it up to the public for any questions or comments. Seeing none, bring it back to council for any questions or comments. Seeing none, I guess I have a question. How does that affect us in any kind of financial situation? Does it cost us more?
No, it actually, the reason why local agencies like to follow and opt into the act, even though the accounting portion is arduous, is that in cases where we are aware that there's an existing contract that has already been bid that we know has good value, we can look at that as an example and not have to follow the strict request for bids that require sealed envelopes and waiting. The other, and this is the biggest thing, is that as long as the contract meets those contract prices, it helps with timing. So if we have a project that we need to move more quickly on, it allows us just to be a little bit more nimble.
Okay.
So financially, it doesn't impact us. When we have, and for smaller jurisdictions where we don't have quite as many contractors responding to our requests for bids, again, this allows us to more quickly find someone who's willing and available to work on the contract.
Thank you. And for our Public Works Director, do you have any comments on this, Robert?
I'm going to reiterate what our city attorney says, what it allows us to. So the regular procedures for public bidding per the Public Contract Code require not only preparing the plans and specs, which we do, but advertising in the local paper multiple times to get the word out. And we actually, in our code, we currently do have an informal bidding process. It's just, it doesn't exactly line up with what the California code is right now. And so we just need to update that along with the resolution so that we're more compliant with state law.
Sounds good. So this is our first reading and we're just introducing it. And then we're going to bring it back for a second reading with the resolutions or amendments.
You can adopt the resolution,
Even
but you introduce the ordinance for.
But we're waiving the first reading, so can we do it all now?
Yes,
today?
so you can make a motion to introduce and waive the first reading of the ordinance and adopt the resolution.
Okay, good. All right. So does anyone make a motion to waive the first reading?
I'll move.
Okay,
Make a
Vice
motion.
Mayor, Vice Mayor made the first
Okay, no problem.
motion. Would you like to second it, Councilmember Winberg?
That would be great.
Thank you. Okay, we have a motion and a
Very
second.
passionate about this.
Yes, it's very good. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? It passes unanimously. Thank you so much. And then we have to move for the resolution. We're going to approve the resolution. I'll make a motion to approve the resolution.
I'll second that.
Councilmember Widmer, second my motion. Any questions? Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, so we have passed the adoption of the resolution. Okay. Okay, moving on to our regular agenda, items number 6 through 9. Item number 6 is to adopt a resolution for the adoption of speed limits in school zones and providing feedback, direction regarding speed limits along Valparaiso Avenue. I think our Public Works Director Robert Abadia is going to take this one.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council and the public. It's recommended that the city council adopt a resolution setting the speed limit at 15 miles an hour in various school zones, and for the council to provide feedback and direction with regards to the speed limit on Valparaiso Avenue. As part of the background, the California Vehicle Code has regulations regarding how speed limits are set, and it provides an opportunity for some additional reductions from where they are normally set. So normally they are either prima facie limits based on it being a local street or a business district, et cetera. And the vehicle code allows for reductions in school zones down to as low as 15 miles an hour, provided that it's in a residential zone, the speed limit is less than 30 miles an hour, and you don't have more than one lane in each direction. There's also allowances for special reductions in senior zones, business zones, and along safety corridors. And back in November, the City Council adopted our local roadway safety plan, designating safety corridors throughout the town. And at that time requested that the Transportation, Bicycle, and Pedestrian Safety Committee consider potential reduction of speed limits in various school zones, as well as along safety corridors. So back at their, following council direction, we went to the Transportation, Bicycle, and Pedestrian Safety Committee for review of speed limits within the school zones throughout the town, as well as to discuss potential reduction along safety corridors and primarily along Valparaiso. In your staff report, you have the recommendations from the Transportation, Bicycle, and Pedestrian Safety Committee to reduce the speed limits in front of Las Lomitas Elementary along Camino al Lago, along Edge Road near Laurel Elementary, Laurel Avenue in front of near Nativity, and on Emily near the Sacred Heart Schools. They considered the rest, but these were the primary ones that they recommended for reduction. It's important to note that a couple of the streets are shared jurisdictionally. And so Camino al Lago between Barney and Alameda de las Pulgas is shared with the County of San Mateo. With your adoption and with your concurrence, we would reach out to the County of San Mateo indicating that we have authorization to reduce the speed limit and request that they do the same on their side so that we can implement. With regards to Laurel Avenue, Menlo Park has already adopted their resolution, and the frontage of Nativity is within the city of Menlo Park. So the approach going northbound is already signed at 15 miles an hour. And the southbound direction, that west side of the street, is also in Menlo Park. So the approach the other direction is signed at 15 miles an hour. So what we basically have is just to kind of close that gap from within the town's jurisdictional limits for that 500 feet beyond the school property to reduce that speed limit. The town wouldn't have to put up any additional signage. It's already signed, but it does assist with enforcement. With regards to the safety corridors, the committee did not recommend reduction along Valparaiso, but we're seeking your feedback as to whether or not you would like us to move forward with that. We would have to come back and adopt an ordinance to reduce the speed limit on Valparaiso.
Okay.
I think you have
So do you want to comment now?
a question.
Do you have a question? Okay, I was going to open it to the public for them to do that first.
Question.
First, I've been doing the public. Does any member of the public have a question or comment about Robert's discussion on item number 6? Okay. There are two online. Let's hear them.
Adrian, you have the floor. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Dear Atherton City Council members, I wanted to please ask you to amend the draft resolution for agenda item 6 to include Encinal Avenue in the school zone speed reductions. Recent improvements such as the speed cushions and delineator posts around the turn and the bike lanes have improved the driver behavior on Encinal Avenue, and they're a really welcome addition to improvement safety. However, the current 25-mile-per-hour speed limit that is in front of Encinal Avenue, in front of Encinal Elementary, is at odds with these infrastructure upgrades. As an Encinal parent that bikes to school with a kindergartner, every day we experience the high-speed passes by drivers that are hurrying to get through to Highway 101 via Marsh or other places off Middlefield. Sometimes even other parent drivers that are in a hurry feel safe and comfortable driving above 25 miles per hour. Encinal Avenue has a narrow, unprotected bike lane and substandard walking space that creates conflict zones. So when people are walking next to the bike lane, there's garbage cans, there's kids kind of wobbling through the bike lane, and there's cars passing. It creates a conflicted shared space. And right now, cars can drive at 25 miles per hour or faster if they want, and they do. So we all know that drivers typically drive faster than posted speed limits. And so this means that as people are coming towards Encinal, they can be going 30 miles per hour or faster, or they're speeding away from the speed cushions or the crosswalk. So please, City Council, I'm sure you've seen the letter from our superintendent, Kristen Gracia, supporting the amendment to agenda item 6. We really felt the tragedy in the community at Encinal. And, as parents and kids that bike to school every day, we really want our, our government officials to take leadership and to take proactive steps. Adding Encinal to this amendment is not going to create undue burdens or inconveniences to residents. All it's going to do is going to help create a safer environment for our children. And we really hope that Atherton moves forward in taking this into consideration. So please amend the agenda item to include Encinal Avenue. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next one.
Mr. Swire, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you for bearing with me one more time. This will be quick. This is a great project. Thanks so much for doing it. I've actually worked with City of San Mateo and Town of Hillsborough in implementing similar policies, and I believe most of the towns in the community have already done so. So great to have you doing this too. I'm also actually working with Supervisors Mueller and Canepa on getting unincorporated areas of the county on board. So that should help in those unique situations that were discussed as probably being in the second phase. What I haven't looked at all the detail, but I would just ask staff to clarify per the previous comment, what school areas that potentially could qualify are being left out, and why is that? In Hillsborough, they did a first phase and they never got around to the second phase. I think it's really important to be as comprehensive and certainly cost effective and using scale in getting the job done right the first time. And then finally, I'd urge you to monitor the results and implement traffic calming where the speed limits are not getting speed down as much as possible. And then finally, I believe there's new signage that's available instead of the old language, I think, which said when children present. I think there's new language which basically says almost all times, because our schools are in use 24/7 and year round between camps and schools, et cetera. So it shouldn't just be limited to when you can see a kid. You never know. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much. Okay, now I'll bring it back to council for questions. Councilmember DeGoya.
Okay, I have 5 questions. The first question is the staff report recommends reducing the speed limit on the full length of Valparaiso, 30 to 25 miles an hour. My understanding is that Menlo Park has decided to reduce it to 25 miles an hour between ECR and Cotton.
Yeah, in the table in the staff report, it is listed as 30 miles. The recommendation is looking at 30 miles an hour, leaving it at 30 miles an hour between the city limit and Cotton,
Right.
and then 25.
So there's a conflict in the staff report.
Right, so this is,
Okay.
you want what the chart is.
Got it. Okay, that's second. On staying on the safety corridors, there, we've had a number of issues on Middlefield, and there's 2 schools in Atherton and 1 school just outside of Atherton on Middlefield. And I wonder if that isn't a potential to 25 miles an hour. That's one. The second question is on the speed limits around schools when children are present. There, I'm sure will be some discussion on it. Had a public comment on that, and we've got emails on that, but also Middlefield right up alongside Encinal. So I'd like to understand staff's perspective on reducing 25 miles an hour as we're doing on part of, or as we're being asked to do on part of Valparaiso, but also whether or not it doesn't make sense to reduce the speed limit when children are present to 15 miles an hour right in front of Encinal.
Or,
Shall I ask all my questions?
yes,
Should
no,
I
go ahead.
stop?
Can I interrupt
Yeah,
a
yes.
question to ask a process question?
Yes,
How are
absolutely.
we gonna go through this? Because I'm just wondering, like, should we do section by section and all ask your questions, and or how are we just
Well,
trying to track
Good
your
question.
questions?
That's good.
Well, since, yeah, he raised his hand first, he had
Yeah.
a question. I thought he had one question, has
Got
5,
questions.
which
Well,
is a
maybe
good,
we should separate the safety corridors from the school
Yeah,
speed limits,
well,
in which case I'm done on the safety.
however, it's, the safety corridors go right next to the schools
Well,
in some way.
there's overlap,
Overlap, exactly.
but
So
the question on Middlefield being,
I think we all have a lot of opinions
500
about
feet
this.
of the school, the safety corridors, 500,
if,
Middlefield would qualify.
is there,
well, I think the safety corridor is all of Middlefield Road. Safety corridors are these 5 listed streets.
the whole street.
For the length of the street. So my safety corridor question, other than the clarification on Valparaiso, was whether or not we shouldn't consider reducing the speed limit on Middlefield from 30 to 25 miles an hour for the entire stretch.
All right. I'll let Councilmember Widmer ask a question.
But are we
We'll
going to
come
go
back to you.
through it, separating the safety corridor?
I think it would be kind of hard to separate it because they all kind of overlap in one way or another. Safety corridors are also with the next to schools. So, yeah.
So, Robert, I haven't looked just recently, but has Menlo Park put reduced speed limits on their side of Encinal?
They don't have a frontage along the roadway in front of Encinal Elementary.
They sure do. They
Um,
back right up to the school on the side that's on this side, on the north side.
If I recall correctly, the street from Laurel to Middlefield is town right of way. The property frontages for Felton Gables are within, the properties within Felton Gables, I believe, are in Menlo Park, but the street, I believe, is ours.
Whole street is ours?
Yes.
So what is your question?
Well, I wanted to know whether or not Menlo Park was supporting.
I say generally, Menlo Park has already done most of their speed limit reductions in front of, I think, all of the schools in Menlo Park. So they've already done their action. They've already approved their 15-mile-an-hour zones. They wouldn't object to us doing it on
I just was asking.
those shared streets. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Vice Mayor, you have a question. Or do you want to wait?
No, my question
You-
earlier was
the
more like,
process.
what's our,
Yeah,
how
game
to
plan.
get my brain
So
Okay.
sorted?
did you
for-
want me to start answering some of Council Members DeGolia's questions, or do you want to wait for them to be aggregated? And
Let's aggregate a little bit
Okay.
because you could probably,
Sure.
combine things. Councilmember. Okay. Could you please speak into the mic so we can hear and, yeah,
Stereo.
Downtown.
Well, two, one is an easy. Are our signs going to say, as the gentleman was referring to, children are present? Because that wasn't discussed which way they are in here. See that?
There's standard signage that's been approved in the MUTCD. And I believe that in compliance with the law, it's supposed to be when children are present.
Second question is, why is it that the other schools are not recommended? Why did they recommend the ones that they did?
At this time, I think they prioritized the ones that were listed. They didn't necessarily think that there was much of a problem, but I think the chair of the committee is here tonight if you want him to speak to it.
Curious, because certainly Snow's is one.
Yeah, so I will say that the adjustments on whichever streets are really to your discretion, how many you want to include now, how many you want to look for at the future or not.
But there wasn't a specific reason why they were left off.
I think it was more of a prioritization and whether or not they felt there was an existing problem. And so I'll use Encinal as an example. We recently put in 2 speed humps. There's a highlighted crosswalk with right there next to the crosswalk is right there next to the speed humps. And so I think that their feeling was there's already been improvements to reduce speeds and they didn't feel a necessity at this point in time.
Plus,
But-
there's three crossing guards on that small stretch of school.
we're still talking Encinal, right?
So
Yeah.
I have to tell you, Encinal during school drop-off and pickup is a mess. It's just a mess. And I don't think even posting 15-mile speed limits is going to make during those hours because you can barely crawl. So people aren't blasting through. But I do recommend that we do the 15-mile near the school, probably from the Laurel stop
Well,
sign.
The limit is 500 feet. So in your attachment, there's an exhibit of how far that stretches.
Right.
I can pull,
Put it up on
that
the
up.
screen.
let me see if I need to do a change. Okay, so here we go. So this is an image for Encinal. And so basically it would stretch up fairly close to Tudor would be the limit. And so right now it's signed at 25 miles an hour. There's an existing sign near Felton Drive. And then on the approach side, it would be adjusted, Middlefield, it would be
The end.
Yeah.
But there's a signal light at Middlefield
Yeah.
and Encinal.
right.
Yep.
And there's if we start talking about Middlefield Road, in our previous meeting recently, we were talking about having it evaluated for a potential signal at Watkins
Yeah.
or up Fair Oaks, up further, Fair Oaks. That would mean Fair Oaks, Marsh, Watkins, Encinal, and then at Lindenwood Gates, and then at
It would be
Middlefield.
Oak Grove, Ravenswood.
And Oak Grove,
Ravenwood.
yeah.
So at this point, if we can focus, I think it'd be better if we focus more on the school
Right.
and then,
Go ahead,
No, you
Vice
let
Mayor.
Diana.
Now you can,
No, I think you should let Diana go first.
Okay,
since I'm
good.
more-
I had a question. The police chief was kind enough to give us an accident report at certain areas, and I'm wondering if there was anything, someone could summarize that for us in terms of if there's anything in that that would give us reason to believe that we shouldn't do all schools?
So attached to your staff report is an exhibit pulled out from a study done by CCAG and Alta with regards to what they're calling this as part of a school safety analysis. And they have identified a youth-based high injury network and identified kind of those top routes. And so those are attachment number 2 to your staff report. And I have that on the screen now. And so you can see where the yellow highlighted streets are ones that they indicated as part of that youth-based high injury network. And then you have kind of a gradation of streets, the darker to lighter. And so though they are not specifically youth-based, not necessarily high injury streets, they are streets that should be considered for potentially some measures. And so what you'll notice is that, for example, Ancinal is highlighted, Laurel is highlighted, Menlo Atherton is highlighted. Though not designated, you have Sacred Heart Schools and Menlo School on Valparaiso, and highlighting Emily and Elena. But for some, as well as around Las Lomitas, but for some reason, only the lower end of Selby, closer to El Camino, was identified on the high injury network.
This is really old data. This goes up to 2020. The police chief just gave us an update that was newer. Maybe I could make this question for the police chief. What's your opinion on safety?
Well, I can say that this is, part of the background studies that were done. We can always do an updated traffic and safety analysis of any of the streets that we want.
But we just got one. Did we not just get that with
That was
all
just
the?
an accident and injury history, not an analysis of what.
And
Were
I
any
believe
of
that
those
was
in
like
these
a
zones that we're talking
10-year.
about? They were.
They were specific to.
Councilmember Widmer.
Yeah, there was the question as to why Encinal wasn't considered. It was discussed at the Transportation Committee. And the consensus of the group was, as the mayor pointed out, during school time, you can't get above 15 miles an hour with the speed bumps and with the traffic going in. There is no room. It's too congested. That's why it's the decision of majority of the people on the committee that they would leave Encinal out because they felt traffic wasn't that fast there. And there are 3 crossing guards there as well.
But, okay, Councilmember DeGoya, and then I would like to
Since
rebut
we're
that.
not asking questions, we're making comments.
Yeah.
My position is we should reduce the speed limit at Encinal. It doesn't matter that it's slow now. We should,
That's
so
fine.
it's slow, okay, no problem. But why have the speed limit at 25 miles an hour when we could have the speed limit at 15 miles an hour when children are present? We should. And we should do that on Middlefield Road also. I haven't heard an argument for why we shouldn't. I also think we should do the same in Selby Lane. I don't know why we wouldn't. I think that we need to do everything we can to protect our kids. I asked the question about reducing all of Middlefield to 25 miles an hour since it's qualifies as a safety corridor, and we've had lots of problems on Middlefield. And I know people speed on Middlefield, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't make it as safe as we can.
Exactly. Okay, so my comment is very much in line with Councilmember DeGoya's about reducing the speeds on Middlefield from 30 to 25. And then when near the schools and when children are present or during school hours to 15 miles an hour. And Encinal also. Encinal is really a big mess. I don't know that reducing the speed is going to really make a big difference. The school was built without enough parking and there's no place for drop-offs, and it's just I don't, and there are 3 crossing guards. There are family members, there's people all around trying to get their kids to school safely. Councilmember Hawkins.
My position is that I agree with what both of you said, but I want to up it in that I think that we should have a consistent policy of 50 mile an hour when children present at all of these schools,
Yes, agree.
all the schools, not just single this one, that one. I think it should be at all of them. We heard back from residents, we heard back from the superintendent of schools, we heard back from neighborhoods. I mean, people agree with us. So I don't think I think that's the right thing to do on the safety corridor. I agree with matching what Menlo Park is doing in Valparaiso. And I agree with what Rick was saying about as well.
If I can
Councilman-
just interject.
Yeah.
I think we have enough grounds in standing that we can easily adjust Middlefield down to 25. I think some further review on Middlefield, whether it can be reduced down to 15, because it's not a local street. And so the law, as I understand it, and I think Mona looked it up, is that it's local streets that you can reduce it down to 15.
But you couldn't like right in front of the school kind of a thing? So no,
So,
you could make it a school zone.
But then this
so,
is
no, it
Middlefield.
is a school zone, and you can drop it down
Middlefield.
to 25. Like I say, right now it's 30 down to 25. And so you're allowed to drop it to 25. I just need to double check whether or not
It's on the-
we can drop it down to 15 in the school zone.
So just
Yeah.
to summarize what you said, because it's a high speed, or it's a high injury network, we can change the entire Middlefield corridor in Atherton to 25.
Yes.
Down from 30. You're investigating whether we can do 15 in front
We'd
of the
have to
school.
double check as to whether or not we can do
Okay.
that to 15.
That's progress.
That sounds good to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That sounds helpful.
One
Yes.
additional suggestion. I brought this up before at the Transportation Committee. The majority of the bike paths that are bike traffic that's on Encinal comes from Laurel. And I know it's not within 500 feet, but if we're making a comment and saying, well, even if it's not within 500 feet, we're going to, or whatever, we're going to reduce it to the limit that we can do it. I'd like to see Encinal going from Glenwood over to Laurel, from going from Encinal to Glenwood. Also reduced because it's got a lot of kids, both before school and after school, and a lot of parents taking kids to school. And these kids are kindergarten and first graders. I brought that up at the Transportation Committee, and, you know, I don't know if it's possible because it's further than 500 feet. But it'd
Yeah,
be great if we could do something there.
So directly, I don't think we can, but we can certainly reach out to Menlo Park and see what opportunities we have, considering it's a shared street. And so I'm happy to reach out to Menlo Park and see what they think can be done.
You know, yes, just 1 second. You know, I think I know every street in Atherton and all the intersections and going this way, that way and everything. But it would really have been helpful if we had an interactive map because, you know, we don't, and here we have this, but it's not
It's not a
so
lot of street
clear.
names on there.
right. And so, Councilor DeGoya, I know you have a very salient question.
Well, I just want to comment. So to expand where we're doing the 15-mile zone from what I had suggested, which was Middlefield and Encinal relative to Encinal School and Selby Lane relative to Selby Lane School, Menlo, Atherton, and Sacred Hearts, those schools border on more streets than are listed at the table. Right?
Mhm,
Los
mhm.
Lomitas borders on Valparaiso. Menlo Atherton borders on Middlefield. Sacred Heart borders on
Emily, Elena, and Valparaiso. And Park.
Valparaiso, but
And-
Emily and Elaine and
And Valparaiso.
Park.
Park
So
Lane.
just a point of clarity.
And the college border and the college borders on Real, as well as Alejandra, and the college isn't listed here.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying we should include that. I'm really not sure we should
So-
include these high schools. I think,
Or colleges,
yeah,
colleges.
the elementary schools, I absolutely believe we should.
So the law, as I understand it, is up through 12th grade.
Uh,
So the college would not be a qualifying.
I have to tell you, the
I'm gonna
college,
say theoretically, and I'll confer with the attorney, considering that Menlo School shares Carton Field, there might be a potential for Alejandra,
I mean, it-
which is on the list. So we had
Right.
we have the safety corridor reduction on Valparaiso. Down to 25 was recommended, and it sounds like there's a consensus of the council to do that. So around Menlo School and the Sacred Heart Schools, we did include consideration of Alejandra, Park, Emily, and Elena. So I thought we covered most streets. The one that, so in addition to the high school there's also Menlo Atherton High School. And so we had consideration of Oak Grove there. We don't really have much frontage on Ringwood. I think we just have I think about
The parking
500
lot.
feet on one side of the road. So the rest of it is county and Menlo Park. So there'd be some significant coordination there. With regards to Laurel Elementary, it's Edge Road in town and Ringwood is San Mateo County. Again, we're happy to reach out to the other jurisdictions to see where they are in terms of reduction. And so if there's a street that you think that we missed in our tables for consideration, we're happy to look at those. And if it's the council's desire to make sure that we cover all of the elementary schools, just advise which of those streets you want in the resolution, and you're welcome to adopt that.
Mayor.
I have a question about Middlefield. When it's in front of the high school, Menlo Atherton High School, is that slice of Middlefield still Atherton or is that Menlo Park?
So we have full from Oak Grove until middle of Ravenswood. And then the school side from Ravenswood to Ringwood. And the other side, the SRI side,
Yeah, that's
is
Menlo
Menlo
Park.
Park.
Okay, because the kids are waiting for a bus there. There's a lot of
Yeah,
kids
so
on the
the Oak
street there, so
Grove
that's
bus
another
stop is
15 mile.
ours.
Hours.
Okay, so
Grove
I
bus.
would be interested in knowing about 15-mile-an-hour reduction for that part of Middlefield as well, given how many kids actually take the bus at the high school. Is that?
That's an investigation because it's
Inve-
still a
I'm
collection.
Yeah,
trying to
I
your
think
Ensenal
that,
investigation, two slices to investigate,
Yeah,
same
so
question,
I
two
think
places.
whatever the rules are for Middlefield are going to be
Right.
across the board. So the recommendation I'd have for you is to adopt a resolution for the local streets. We'll come back with information on Middlefield
For
as
both
to how
schools.
low we can.
Well, it would
Okay,
it'd also be Alameda because Coastal Alameda borders Alameda, which is also the same category as Middle.
Yes.
Okay, so let's just be clear what we're going to adopt as the resolution. And do we want
There's
it
two
to
tables on
be,
page 3 and 304 of the staff report.
revised on page what? 3?
304 of the
I've
staff
got it
report.
right here. Yeah.
Top table is the one that's in the resolution. Is that right, Robert?
Yes.
And the second table that lists Adelante Selby, Ensenal, et cetera, I think are the streets that the council have been talking about this year.
Right. And are we going to maybe include that in the resolution? Does everybody agree about that, to include that second table into that resolution up there? Good.
Field to
Okay.
25.
Good about that?
Those would have to come back. The speed limit reductions
But they'll bring
on the
it
safety
back.
corridors would have to come back via ordinance.
Then we have to separately talk about Valparaiso.
So,
Councilmember DeGoya.
so I just don't know about the high schools and the Sacred Heart School. One option for us would be to include the local streets for Selby Lane School and for Encinal School, and to refer back to the Transportation Committee, those other. I'm just not sure what the issues are.
Yeah,
I'd
I
kinda
would
like
say
to
they
understand
already
better.
considered them. They didn't recommend them at this time,
Well-
but
But
it's
did
your.
they not recommend them for a reason, or did they just not consider them?
No, they talked about them.
Then why
So-
didn't they recommend?
They didn't feel the need at the time.
Okay, I'm just going to respond to Councilmember DeGoya. I live at the corner of Emily and Alejandra, and I see the school kids riding their bike. I see the college kids running down the streets from Alejandra, around Park, around Elena, around Elena and Emily. And, you know, they really take up the street. One of the things that Emily has around the Sacred Heart campus is a pretty wide right of way where pedestrians can walk through the gravel and not on the street so much. But, you know, you can't go much faster than 20 miles an hour, or 50 miles an hour without hitting somebody, you know, people with baby carriages and running and stuff. So
Do it.
that's what I think, you know, because I never go faster, literally, than 20 miles an hour, leaving my house and going to Valparaiso down Emily. It doesn't feel safe to me. And there's always people that are in packs walking or biking. That's just my personal opinion. Vice Mayor.
I think we're looking at it at streets, but I think we should be looking at it by schools. And why would say some schools get 15 miles an hour more than other schools? And so to me, paint with the same brush, 15 miles an hour for all the schools and make all these kids safe. My
agree with
perspective.
Stacy.
It's pretty clear cut.
That
You're
100%.
the vice mayor. Golly. How's that sound to everybody?
Good.
All right. Do you have some direction?
Well, you have to adopt a resolution, and
But
so if you
You're going to
can.
make a
Yeah,
change.
yeah. Do we need to bring it?
With the changes.
Yeah, so if you want
We
me
just want to make sure
to,
you make the
To
changes.
to change Middlefield Road from 30 to 25 miles an hour,
that's separate.
we can't do that tonight?
No,
No.
that cannot happen tonight. Oh, there's special legislation that allows the reduction of speed limits for, adjacent to schools to be done by resolution. All other speed limit reductions must be done by ordinance. So what we're going to bring back is researching the ability to reduce the speed limits on Middlefield. And if that's allowable, then we'll come back with an ordinance to effectuate that. But for the meantime, there's a resolution presented before you. The recitals reflect actually what your desire has been stated today, which is a reduction at all school sites to 15. So what we just need to do is a motion and a second adopting the resolution with amendments to reflect the additional streets on the table in the resolution.
Well, I'll make a resolution that we adopt the proposed resolution for all local streets surrounding the schools as identified in the two tables on page 4, to 15 miles an hour, and that staff will investigate that for the arterial streets that surround school.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any questions? Okay, we'll take a vote. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries unanimously.
Madam Mayor, just for clarity on the Valparaiso issue, the council supports.
25.
And staff is going to investigate or prepare an ordinance to change the speed limit on Middlefield Road from 30 to 25. And that's separate from investigating what happens in front of Encinal School.
Correct.
Got it. Thank you, guys. Going on to item number 7. It's to provide feedback and direction regarding utility services, exemptions process for development projects, and approval of overhead electrical utility service crossing of the Atherton Channel for 39 Berry Lane. Robert, you're up again. You're a bit busy guy.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. The discussion around undergrounding of electrical utilities was brought forward to you back at your March study session, at which we presented several case studies of how staff was addressing the town ordinance with regards to the undergrounding of utilities that serve development projects. We also highlighted a project where there was limited opportunity to be able to do the undergrounding, and that we had a representative from PG&E on the line as well as the developer that kind of walked through some of the issues. Following that meeting, PG&E did some further investigation and basically said that there was no alternative. And so the council had asked for staff to come up with a process and procedure, and so we've done that for you tonight. And so what we recommend is that all applicants per our code plan for underground utility service to their property. They have to formally apply to PG&E to do so. If PG&E says that it's not available, staff would meet with the developer and PG&E and work through various alternatives to confirm that there is no other alternative. A lot of times it's related to distance or cost more so than actual feasibility. So if it's a cost issue, that's not something that we're necessarily recommending a waiver for. It's really limited to the physical inability to provide that underground utility service. So following that, we would require the applicant, the developer, to file a formal application requesting for such an exemption. We would review the application, again, confirm with PG&E that there is no feasible alternative. We'd confer the various alternatives, like I said, that, you know, what about that pole? What about that pole, et cetera? Can you provide an underground transformer or whatever the other options might be? If after all of that, there's still no viable alternative, we would have conversations with the city manager, at which point we would bring it forward to the council like we are tonight with 39 Berry Lane. And so what we would also, if this is the direction you would like to go, be working with the finance director to develop an appropriate fee for all of the staff time and work that's required for such coordination to cover staff costs and our time here talking to the council, et cetera, for these types of exemptions. As much as we would like to have as high a fee as we can to really discourage it, we are limited to cost recovery. And so we can't set, as much as I'd like to set an arbitrary fee, we can't do that.
Just need to take
Understand.
your sweet time. working on
Understand.
it.
Okay, so I'm going to.
So I'm going to break it up in two parts. So
Okay.
that is the outline of the process. If that's something that the council is comfortable with, we can either have you have that conversation, collect public comment now, or we can go into, again, reiterating the issues with regards to 39 Berry. The developer is here to answer any questions with regards to that
So
project.
much. Okay, I'm going to open it up for the public who, if anyone here has any questions or comments on this item, welcome to come forward. If not, we'll bring it back to council for questions on this. I think we all remember the presentation, and I think the developer did make a good presentation. Was that in March? It seems
It was in March.
more recent than that. Anyway, any questions? Any comments? Well, then I'd like to call for a motion to approve the proposed overhead electrical line over the Atherton Channel easement from the existing pole in the rear of 70 Elena Avenue to a new pole to be located in the rear of 39 Berry Lane, close to the channel easement, where it would then be brought underground to serve the property. And also accept staff's recommendation that the council approve the process that was proposed and outlined by Public Works Director Robert Avadia. And the fee, once developed, will be included in the June 2025 fee resolution for adoption. Can I get a motion to approve that?
Submit a motion that we approve.
Thank you. I'll go ahead and second that motion since I made such a big deal about it. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Of course you may.
So in order to affect, not the Berry Lane specific, but the general proposal to allow for the adjustment in the future, is that an ordinance-based change or is that just direction?
So we have an ordinance in place that requires underground utility service.
Right.
They are asking for an exemption. It would be a request for exemption from that ordinance, which is.
For Berry Lane, for this specific.
In general, we have a code that says all utility service to new construction must be underground. So staff can't necessarily just disregard the ordinance.
exception.
The exemption would either just come to you for consideration like we're doing today,
I see.
or modify the resolution to say under such and such circumstances, staff could.
The
But our
ordinance.
recommendation
The
is to
ordinance.
keep the process with the council.
We would come back with an ordinance revision that provides
Yeah,
out.
I think that's what he's
Right,
asking.
we would want, right, exactly. So we want to amend the city's municipal code that sets forth the existing requirement to then say the process for seeking an exemption. So it's clarified for all future applicants.
That's what I thought.
In the- in
And,
the-
and my understanding, just please clarify, from my conversation with the city manager, is that in the future, when you exercise that exception to the rule, that you're going to bring that to the council on every occasion. So that will be
Right, so.
included probably in the change.
Right, so it will be comparable, the best analogy I can give is like a variance. So we have an opportunity for an applicant to seek a variance, but in order to obtain it, they have to take it to the planning commission and seek that. So this would be the same. The municipal code will be amended to allow the opportunity for an exemption, but before it's granted, it would come before you.
And they have to hit all of those,
That's
that
what I
list of
thought.
processes.
Exactly.
I think Council Member Hawkins has a question.
By building it in that way, that there is an exception, are we by any way taking the teeth out of it? Because it should be our position, we want underground. And as Robert said, doesn't matter, if they say it's too expensive, that's not a good excuse. We should be hardline on this, so by making this modification, does it in any way take the teeth out of that
Great
rule?
question. So the default is always, the general rule is you must underground. It's only if you could meet all of the exceptions that you're even eligible to come before the council for the exemption.
Then
So
what's
what-
the
yeah,
merit
so
of doing it? Is there merit to do it as opposed to not doing it? And as opposed to just leaving it? Because you're going to come back to us anytime, every time anyway.
No, so right now, there is no way to afford an applicant that exemption. That, which is why we came before you to say, do you even want this as a possibility? The default is it's not an available remedy. So it really should be the exception that gets the exemption and not the general rule.
And that's what we just approved.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Am I finished? Did I wrap it up? Thank you. Okay, going on to item number 8. And it is regarding council having to provide feedback and direction regarding interim improvements along designated bicycle and pedestrian routes associated with development projects. And again, this is our Public Works Director, Robert Avadia, who is going to provide the background.
Madam Mayor, before you jump into that, you and I had discussed providing some clarity that this is not an agenda item by which the council corrects and recommends the implementation of bicycle ways along. Just a discussion of right of way for future development.
Correct. Just a clarification that what we're talking about here is not in any way to be construed that we are recommending or approving bicycle lanes or other pedestrian paths in this discussion. It's just a discussion about the right-of-way in front of everyone's property or along Atherton Avenue,
In particular, as it
Atherton
applies to
Avenue,
development,
new development.
site development.
Right, yeah, that's okay. Or significant about development, is that what you said?
Significant.
Yeah.
More than 50%, yeah, majority. Okay, Robert, talk to us, please.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Again, we're looking for feedback and direction with regards to whether or not development projects should, should build interim improvements along designated routes and or otherwise accommodate potential future improvements along designated routes. So as a bit of background, the town adopted its bicycle and pedestrian master plan back in 2014. It designated certain bicycle routes. There are a couple streets currently designated to have Class 2 bicycle lanes, including Atherton Avenue and Selby. We are currently in the process of updating our bicycle and pedestrian master plan, which may change what and where our priorities as a town are. Regardless of what the priorities are, if there's a desire for improvement, whether it is a bikeway or pedestrian way, there's a need for accommodation within the right-of-way. Currently, most significant development projects and all full site development projects, they redo the frontage of the property. The town currently has a set of guidelines as to what the town will approve. We do not dictate materials. We do not dictate planting pallets, but we do require that within the first 3 feet of the right-of-way beyond the improved roadway, which would be either the edge of the asphalt or the backside of the gutter, that it be something permeable and low. So there's a height limit of 5 inches for the first 3 feet. Beyond that, it is up to 3 for the next 3 feet, so up to 6 feet. You're allowed to go up to 3 feet in height, at which point you're allowed to put in trees and other things, as long as when they're fully grown, the front of the trunk is behind that 6 feet. Similarly, we have a requirement that physical obstructions, which are boulders, logs, mailboxes, keypads, and other things, be located at least 6 feet from the edge of the road. That allows for, in case of emergency, pull off. Theoretically, if people have gravel frontages, it's a walking space, etc. We have a development project that was required to build frontage improvements along Atherton Avenue. And that project bonded for improvements. They designed some, but with the current state of our master plan being up in the air and not exactly knowing what we want on that street, we kind of need to figure out how we want that development to go forward. So I'm going to share a few images with you and kind of walk you through some of this stuff. And so the guidance that we're looking for is whether or not, first, these new development projects should keep things a certain distance from the improved roadway to allow for any future construction, whether or not we want to further regulate that first few feet in addition to just setting back these fixtures that are difficult to remove. Whether we want them to put in a permeable walkway or something else along the frontage that can be used in the interim until something happens in the future. Okay?
But can I ask you a question? You said that the rule is that people can't put mailboxes or other fixtures within the first 6 feet, but I think there's a lot of mailboxes within 6 feet of the edge of the road because the mail person drives right up on the road and
So-
drops mail into those mailboxes. No, he said 6 feet.
So the code says 6. The concern is that since the code was adopted, and I'm going to say, I'll agree with you that there's a lot of mailboxes that are closer. Most of the old ones are just a little metal post with the little tube.
But
If a car
there's some
hits
of
it,
those new box.
if a car hits it, it's inconsequential, really. But all the new mailboxes are not little things. They are large structures that are made out of concrete or block or something
Metal.
that is substantial enough that it's not going to move when somebody hits it. So it's in our interest from a safety perspective to keep those things off of
But
the
are
edge of the
none of
road.
those allowed within 6 feet is what you're saying?
That's the way that the code is written and we try and enforce it. And I'm going to say it's more important.
Measured, I have measured to know, but
So it's more important on routes like Atherton, Selby, Stockbridge, that these things be further away from the edge of the road.
And it does vary by street. There are some, like saying, that are right up against that edge of pavement, but if you drive down Ashfield, they're set back. The older boxes are set back. Good miles. So it varies.
Okay. All right. So here is an example
Okay.
image out of Google for Atherton Avenue, and you can see how wide it is from the edge of the road to the property line. So there's a lot of space. In this case here, the frontage improvements are really limited. On the right side of the screen, what you'll see is basically gravel, and then they have logs there to kind of limit parking, et cetera. On the other side, there are some trees that have been planted. And again, it's just, I'm going to call it a soft side, which is compliant with our code. Here's another image just a little further down Atherton Avenue. And you can see here on the right side, they have a setback from the edge of the roadway. It looks like it's about a 3-foot strip of gravel, at which point they start their vegetation. And on the left side, it kind of varies, but you can see that the shrubbery and the higher planting are about 3 foot off the edge of the roadway. And then here is kind of another similar image, gravel on the side, shrubbery set back, and on the left side of the screen is just dirt, and then again you have the landscaping and shrubbery. So this is all in compliance with the code. We don't tell people what color the aggregate needs to be. As long as that frontage is pervious, and our code allows for 2 exemptions to the pervious nature, and that is with regards to access, and so that would be driveways and walkways, allowing for impervious surfaces for that.
Robert, I have a really quick question
Yes.
about the gutter, the concrete gutter that I see on both sides. Does that go all the way
It
along?
varies.
Yeah.
It's built by the development. Sometimes they'll build it, sometimes they won't. New development right now, most of them are triggering green infrastructure. So what you'll see in addition to this is the green infrastructure basins along their frontage.
So is it possible through this that we're looking at today, we can direct not having things like gravel right there, because if you're a bicyclist and even though you're on a Sharrow and you get pushed off the road, you're on gravel or something that's loose, you're going to fall out? should be something like decomposed granite or something like that. We could do that through this. I
Yeah,
don't
so
care
what
if
we're,
it's
what we're
8, 10
asking
feet,
for
whatever it
is,
But that's what, it should be something that's safe. People that are either walking or, more importantly, riding a bike that you're gonna slide out if it's on gravel or grass even.
so the recommendation that you have in the report is some sort of firm and stable surface. And so again, everybody's aesthetic is different and this town is very accommodating to that. And so it's really what guidelines do you want to set for that area? Do you want to leave it that they can do whatever they want as it is now? Do you want
But
them
it's
to
do whatever
provide
they
some?
want 5 feet back.
No, it's.
But I say, right now, we have the rules that we have. So the question is do we want to make any sort of adjustment to our current rules to set things back further and limit what's in the first zone from the edge of the road? And we can talk about how wide and how high and what we want, and whether or not we want any fixtures and permanent obstructions in that zone. And so I have a couple of
Robert,
additional images.
I just want to interrupt you just one quick second, because I just really want to clarify. If you go back to your other slide, please. Okay. In this section, on both sides of the road, it's like gravel. It's not landscaped at all. But if
One's gravel and one's dirt.
okay, but if a resident had wanted to plant like very low growing up to 5 inches of turf or ground cover, they could go all the way to that curb, the gutter.
They can go all the way to the gutter.
Okay, so,
And there are residents that have done.
right, but that's allowed. You're
Yes.
allowed to do that.
Yes.
Which I always thought was, I think the reason is because wanted to beautify the road and the property and everything. But once you do that, you know, unintended consequences come because sometimes they grow bigger than 5 inches, or, you know, you start putting
Yes.
pottery around them and stuff.
Like I said, that's why we're having this conversation. So part of it is, do we want that space available right now as development happens for pedestrians?
And it's 3 feet wide only, or is
Currently,
it
the
5
rule
feet?
is 3.
It's
Currently,
from
it's-
the gutter back to where you can go up to 5 feet high of
5
foliage.
inches,
Is 5 inches
5
low,
inches.
yeah, but it's 3 feet
So
back. Okay, you're gonna do
here's,
this. Oh, here's a diagram. Good,
Here's a diagram of what you're allowed to do now.
good, okay.
Okay, so you have the roadway, you have the gutter, you have the 3 foot, and it's marked as low ground cover or other pervious, meaning that you want to plant it, you can plant it as long as it stays low. It's not any sort of visual obstruction. People do what they do for a variety of reasons. They like the aesthetic. They don't want people parking in front of their house. They don't want people walking in their landscaping. It varies. Some people do a wider permeable area, put gravel because they want parking. But our requirement is those first 3 feet, nothing more than 5 inches. The next 3 feet, nothing more than 3 feet tall. Beyond that, you can put a tree, you can put your mailbox, you can put whatever you want. We don't allow walls, we don't allow structures other than those mailboxes and keypads. But if you want to have, 10-foot high shrubs, you're fine.
And so what is the width? It doesn't say on your map here. What's the width from the 6 foot minimum back to the property line?
So it varies street by street. And so Atherton Avenue has a really wide right of way. I think it's probably around 70 feet total. And so you probably have about 15 plus feet on each side of the street. On Selby, I think the right of way is either 60 or 66. So it's, the roadway right now, I think is about 24 feet wide. So you probably have about 13 maybe.
But it's 3 feet and another 3 feet.
That's
That's-
today's rule.
That's today's rules, and that's Atherton property. It's public property.
Yeah, all the way to
Right
the
of way.
property line is the
All-
road right of way.
Okay, so I was just going to get to
Yeah.
that. So even though that's 6 feet, so whatever goes after that 6 feet back to the property line, that's still public property.
That's correct.
It's not residential property that they pay taxes on.
It's not their private property,
Private
but it
property.
is their maintenance responsibility.
Whatever they put there, it's a maintenance. They have to maintain it.
So the image on the screen now, in essence, is that same image adjusted.
Got it.
And so what this has is a picture of a pervious or other walkway for the first 5 feet. This is just an image for discussion purposes. It doesn't propose, again, for us to build anything. It's a matter of, do you want a developer that's redoing their site to put anything in? Or do you otherwise want them not to put something in to block something in the future? Again, the issues that we all know is that if somebody puts something in, there's a vested interest. If they didn't put it in and they bought a piece of property and it looks a certain way, they have a vested interest in keeping it that way. The question is as property turns over and gets redeveloped, do we want any sort of accommodation so that if the town decides someday in the future to do something, how much do we have to rip out? Okay. And so this image, again, it's just an image. It doesn't propose for us to build anything. Shows a walkway area at the edge of that gutter. That gutter provides a separation from the vehicular traffic for the pedestrian. And then kind of limiting a height zone for landscaping adjacent to that and putting in this picture 10 feet. It's at the council's pleasure if you want to reduce the amount for trees, structure, mailboxes, or other items that would be within that right-of-way zone.
But this would only apply to those areas.
To those designated routes. And what would happen as we bring forward the bicycle and pedestrian master plan, some of those routes may change, some of those routes, some new streets may be added for pedestrian zones or other things, depending on the feedback that we get.
But based on the staff report, currently this would just apply to Atherton Avenue.
Currently.
And that is because they have the widest, that is because they're kind of.
No,
we're talking
I
about it
say
because they
right
have-
now, those are the primary designated routes. I'll give you a side example, and this is not something that is contemplated. It's not something that has been addressed, but I think that when we were going through efforts with regards to our neighborhood traffic management efforts, there were folks in Lindenwood that were interested in walkways on Irving or James or something like that. So if those streets come up in our new master plan, we will be looking for policy direction on what to do on any of the designated streets with regards to new development requirements or redevelopment requirements on routes that have been deemed important enough to say we want facilities on.
Just going to make
So
a quick
we're not
comment.
asking for you would adopt an order. We just want to know which direction you want us
Sure.
to go.
So just a quick question on this proposal, per your diagram that's on the screen, it says there wouldn't be gate entry mechanisms or mailboxes within the first 10 feet. How will the postal worker get mail 10 feet over this planted material?
Well, we would need to work through some design issues, but I think part of it is going to be, can the postal worker drive up to it? So if the mailbox is right next to the driveway,
And
then they can probably drive up to it. We're
they'd just
not
have,
put-
but the rule, I understand from residents, the rule from the postal office right now, they have to be accessible from the street. And in fact, the resident that talked to me said they were instructed by the post office to ignore whatever the town said. But if they want the mail people to.
So
put mail in their
I believe
mailbox,
that they have, I'm going to say that
Telling you what they said.
it's probably worth some sort of conversation with the postmaster. There are different rules, and I know that they have one exhibit in their rules that says that it needs to be like 8 inches from a curb so that they can drive up and do it. We don't have curbs in most of the town. The one neighborhood that has sidewalks, the mailboxes are up at the house.
And in those photos that you were showing from Madison Avenue, many of them are all the way back.
Well,
If
like
they're
most
at
of
the
them, like
driveway,
at the gate,
not-
Yeah, they're at
right?
the gate.
Aren't they mostly at the gate?
Yeah.
At the gate to the
Kind of
driveway.
at the gate, and that's set
And it's set
back.
back.
Yeah,
And I'm
they-
not going to say that there are certain post office workers that want it closer. Right now, our rule in the code is 6 feet from the edge.
So.
Councilmember Whitmer, of course.
Yeah, so you're looking for our feedback, so I understand it. So, I've already given you some feedback. I'd like to have some decomposed granite or something, so if you're on the side of the street and you have to pull off with your bike, not on one of those motorized bikes, but pedal one, that, I'm not gonna get torn up by a bunch of gravel, that or grass, whatever. I think 10 feet has caused a lot of uproar in the community. I think 10 feet might be a bridge too far. I can see that, I like the 5-foot space for either a walkway or, where you can pull your bike off, especially when you're on Sharrow. I think 10 feet is pushing it a little far, and heard from a lot parts to that. Back, 6 or 7 feet. You want to put a foot gutter in there. I can't see going, 10 foot is just, it's a significant number, and want to see that, and they're afraid we're going to force them to do it today. Also, there's going to be the question of, if you've got like a checkerboard of who's done it, who hasn't, all over town, it's not going to look so great. So I'm not in favor of 10. Being a little bit smaller than that, and for the bikers.
So
Thank you, Councilmember Whitmer. It just occurred to me that I hadn't given the public a chance to speak on this item before we all kind of got excited and wanted to make our own comments. Are there any members of the public who have a question or a comment, or would just like to opine on this item? Well, people who are here, you get your first choice. Come on. Yeah, don't be shy. We're not going to bite. No, you have to come up here so we can hear you. There's a microphone. And
Okay, I just want
what's
to.
your name?
My name is Patty Spizafero, and I live on 130 Selby Lane.
Thank
So
you.
this does impact me.
Thank you.
And I just want to say, I'm very new to this, so I don't know what the protocol is, but just from a witnessing this meeting, it just seems like we're putting the cart before the horse. I think we should really, the real issue is the bike lane. And if we're doing this in preparation for the bike lane, then for me as a resident, I feel like we're not being heard because we don't want the bike lane. We never wanted the bike lane. And by doing this it feels like we're being railroaded into that direction.
Okay.
And I want to go on the record for saying that.
Yes, you are on record. So thank you so much for your opinion and your comments. I appreciate it so much. Anyone else? Yes.
I'm Rex Fanato with Pacific Peninsula Group, and we're the developer sort of in question that probably initiated a lot of this. We purchased 178 Atherton Avenue as 2 of the 8 Fisher property acres. And when we got approval for a subdivision year and a half ago, or about a year ago, and as part of that requirement, we had to post a bond for the potential future bike lane improvements that were part of, I think, 2014's master plan, if I'm correct.
Yeah.
Now, the problem is when we started it, the reason why we posted a bond is initially when we were working with Mr. Avadia and his staff, we were jumping through hoops that we started to realize weren't fully defined in the code, what the requirements were going to be. And so we sort of brought that to Mr. Roderick's attention and all determined, let's post a bond until it's figured out what is the plan for this bike lane. And just to kind of, without jumping in circles, and I might do it a little bit, there's a lot of contradicting requirements right now, as I see. I'll give an example. We're required to have permeable surfaces, right? Because drainage has to go through to the soil. And Mr. Widmer gives a great example. We suggested before we knew it needed to be permeable, let's do DG for this section because it's nice and compact and tight and safe for people to walk on and ride on. Should they have to exit the roadway for any reason, you can park on it if you need to. And then we found out we can't do that because it's not a permeable surface. So, but you can't put gravel because it's not ADA accessible. So then what are you left with? You're left with permeable pavers, permeable concrete, permeable asphalt. And the worry there, and that's when that's one of the things that we're kind of ringing alarm bells. We do a ton of development in Atherton, and we know the residents. We don't know all the residents, but we know how the residents feel in general. I don't think they would want to see that thoroughfare of Atherton Avenue turn into permeable concrete, permeable asphalt, permeable pavers for a certain section, right? The first 6 feet, let's say. The other thing is we were going through what the requirements were and there was going to be the 12-foot roadway was going to turn into 11 feet. And then there's going to be a 4-foot bike lane. There's going to be 2 feet of curb and gutter. And then there's going to be 4 feet of walking surface. So bottom line is this extremely wide section of right-of-way between the roadway and people's property lines, we're going to be reduced to like 3 to 5 feet. And using our property as example, those beautiful laurel hedge, we'd have to take the whole thing out because it comes out about 8 feet. So listen, we don't necessarily have this major objection to the whole thing, but we do have an objection. We did, which is why we posted the bond and wanted the conversation to happen. There wasn't a defined plan. Nobody knew it was going to happen. And so that's kind of what initiated this whole thing, I would say. And I think, and I can understand where Mr. Avadia is coming from on behalf of the town. For people doing new stuff until we figure out the bike lane, let's try to carve out and make sure they don't put a bunch of improvements that they're going to be upset about ripping out in 5, 6, 7, 8 years when the bike lane gets installed, whatever version of a bike lane gets installed. So that's kind of, I'm giving a little bit of the history of what's going on here. So I don't know what the solution is. At a certain point, we do need to finish our improvements because we'll finish our project there. We have to install something. We are happy to stay 10 feet, 12 feet back without any major improvements. We put low ground cover. DG, I guess we can't do, but we'll figure something out. That doesn't cost a lot of money to take out later. But I think this is going to potentially become a major thing where a lot of residents on these thoroughfares aren't going to be super happy about ripping out the amount of landscape that they've put in front of their homes. So that's that. You can ask me questions if you want.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Anyone else like to share their thoughts on this? Anyone online, Anthony?
Mr. Suarez, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Lewis, for letting me opine. Yeah, seems like a great opportunity to think of the future. I mean, especially if it's only applying to new developments for the most part. That's probably the least pain or the most pain-free way to make some of these changes. I think the fundamental question is, do you want people to be able to safely walk and bike on all the streets? And that includes people with disabilities. I haven't really heard them addressed. It sounds like you're focusing on Atherton, but I would think it would be beneficial to be able to walk and or bike on all streets and not in the middle of the road. The showers that were mentioned before do not provide any protection and certainly no comfort if you're really trying to get kids to walk to school, and you certainly don't have enough room for bike lanes on the more narrow streets. For that reason, I think the 5 foot that you have for the bike walk section is a minimum. 5 feet is the minimum space that you use on a road for a curbside bike lane. It's also, I think, convenient if you have 2 people walking side by side, want to hold hands. Shouldn't be too narrow. And also, I think that the surface does need to be firm and smooth enough to accommodate somebody in a wheelchair. There's no reason that just because somebody is in a wheelchair, they shouldn't be able to get down the street without riding in the middle of the road. Well, same goes for people that don't have a mountain bikes. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Questions?
Yes,
Would you
I'm
like me
going,
to
I'm going to
respond to
bring
a
it back
couple
to
things?
council now. Are you finished?
I just wanted to interject a couple of items.
Okay.
The recommendation for the area adjacent to that gutter would be something that is firm and stable. And as noted in the exhibit, it says permeable or other, meaning that I think that it's recommended that the council consider whether or not, if we are going to have some sort of walkway, whether or not it needs to be permeable or if it can be considered kind of like those access areas where we have that exemption. In which case, if this area were not permeable, it would have to be directed to a treatment area so that it can filter and infiltrate. So the other part is that if we don't do bikeways on any of these streets, the area is still available for pedestrian and other access.
Okay. And Councilmember Hawkins.
Do we have any requirements for green infrastructure? I know that when we touch a street,
Yeah.
required to put in green infrastructure. When people develop the public, are there any requirements for green
So
infrastructure?
we have, there are 2 requirements. So the first overarching requirement is that of the state, the Bay Area Regional Water Quality Control Board. And though we started a little earlier, they recently enacted a requirement that any single family, they've predominantly regulated subdivisions and commercial and other developments rather than single family homes. But in the most recent permit, they now regulate large single family homes. So when you have a single family home development that creates or replaces 10,000 square feet or more of impervious area, they have to include stormwater treatment measures, so biotreatment basins, et cetera. That includes any impervious areas associated with that project in the right of way. What the town has done is say, in addition to what you are required to by that, we want you to treat all of your stormwater frontage. And so what that does is it gives us the allowance that if for whatever reason they need to repave the entire road because they damaged it, or they have 15 different cuts and they need to clean it up, that area is automatically covered and it doesn't have to be recalculated. The other part is it helps us with our green infrastructure and making sure that all of that roadside water gets treated. So that is imposed on all full site developments, but the substantials right now don't trigger.
So does that feed into what you just said a minute ago, that we will allow permeable and not permeable? But if it's
That-
not permeable, it has to address the water and the structure?
That would be the recommendation.
So is that what the rules currently are?
The rules currently don't allow for an impervious surface other than for access to the property. And that's been interpreted to include driveways and walkways. So if you have a pedestrian gate and you have a walkway going to it, that's allowed to be impervious.
And he was saying that there's no surfaces, that you're really limiting the surfaces. Do we have any requirements that things be handicap compliant? Because I hear not only bikes, but baby strollers, wheelchairs. If you walk down the street, there's certain areas where they put the big loose gravel. You cannot The baby's carriages are there or on the street. So we currently have no rules around that.
We don't currently have official walkways. And so therefore, they're not required to be compliant with ADA. And so if we call this a walkway, then it would have to be firm and stable. As Councilmember Whitmer said, it wouldn't be allowed to have gravel. And so you have two options, as Rex indicated. If it's going to be permeable, you're kind of limited to what that's going to be, whether it's going to be permeable pavers, permeable concrete like we have outside here, permeable asphalt, which are all firm, stable, and permeable. Or if you want to have a firm and stable non-permeable surface, that would require a change to our code, obviously, to allow for that additional space. But what you would do is codify that they would have to build a firm, stable walkway area along their frontage, whatever width you decide. And as part of that, they would be required to include stormwater treatment. And again, for most of these full site developments, a lot of them are triggering that requirement anyway.
I'll ask a question. Do we currently have a rule that you have to have like mailboxes and things so that when you pull in your driveway, your entire car is out of the street when you get your mail out?
For the mailbox, no, we try and have them locate their keypad so as much of their car can be off of the car needs to be off of the road. The question that this will migrate its way down to is, where does the gate need to be if we're taking that first 5 feet for a walkway, such that the tail of a car isn't blocking the walkway area?
So that needs to be taken into account too.
Yeah, and that would be one of those reasons why you would say it should be further away from the edge of the road.
Yeah, I'm trying to consolidate my thoughts, but we're not talking about bike lanes today, but what I do know is that Atherton is a walking town, and that's been a universal thing. Whenever things come up, people are not feeling safe walking in this town, walk on the street. We see people in wheelchairs on the street. I have pushed a stroller on the street when I haven't been able to push it through the gravel. So to me, this feels like, even if we don't do bike lanes, which everyone knows I am in support of, having this improvement in the interim step for pedestrians is a great thing in this town. So I think we should do this. I don't know what nuance you need from us, of 5 feet, 3 feet, whatever. Are you guys gonna come back with a?
So what we would do is, what we need is your feedback and direction. Do you want us to come back with some sort of code changes that codify some of this stuff, that provide that allowance for that firm and stable versus having to be permeable for that walkway area? Do we require that, and when do we require it? And then if you want to change that setback from 6 feet from the improved roadway, not counting this area of walkway for the mailbox and or keypads, et cetera.
Okay, I'll go to you next. Okay. I also have a
Okay,
question.
so I've got a couple comments. Number one, I mean, we are replacing the asphalt walkway in the park with DG. I think that that is a surface that we should look at favorably, because wheelchairs can operate on it, and it's not concrete or pavers, which I totally agree with what the public comment was about, how people would not want a 5-foot wide concrete path. It's basically a sidewalk running through every street in Atherton. I mean, I am absolutely opposed to that, and I don't believe that we're going to support that. So I think looking at DG for when there's a walkway path is the right thing to do, and that's what we've decided to do in the park. I think with respect to this specific issue, we're putting the cart before the horse. that I think it's very important in the course of our approving the new bike ped master plan that we give direction to staff on exactly this subject as you said you would want in the course of that discussion. But I think trying to do that now is putting the cart before the horse. But this conversation would apply only to Atherton Avenue and Selby Lane at the moment. And Atherton Avenue and Selby Lane are a problem here because of what is in the bike ped master plan, because we did 4 master plans at one time and we didn't focus on particulars while we were doing 4 master plans. And we've now decided we're going to do 1 master plan at a time, which I think is responsible. And I'm certain that as this new master plan gets developed, we're going to focus very specifically on what the implications are for each road that we're talking about doing a change on, whether it's bike lanes or walking paths or both. But to make this decision now and to govern people who would be doing new development on those 2 roads now is putting the cart before the horse. We need to wait until we're doing the new master plan to address this issue. I personally like the idea of a walkway like like staff is suggesting, but I think it's critical that we address that issue with the residents on every single street that we would be talking about it on. And we've had some discussion about that with regard to Selby Lane when we were talking about the bike paths. And it's not easy, right? Where that walking path would go. And there were a lot of residents that wanted a walking path on Selby Lane. And I'm looking forward to having that discussion as we look at the new bike ped master plan. But I don't think we should be controlling this now. I think we should wait until that time and deal with it at that time. And I think the current rules that we've got are fine. And I understand there's a potential problem if somebody puts a mailbox or a keypad that is at that 6-foot level point where we authorize it, and that becomes a problem because in the future we decide to have 10 feet on that road. But
They have to
I don't
remove
think
it.
that's a big deal. I don't think there's going to, I mean, we're in the middle, or we're working on that master plan now, our consultant is, and we're going to have that resolved within the next year. And that's at the time where we should deal with this issue, not now.
Thank you. So I want to bring it back to something that is Rex brought up. I mean, what we're doing to this developer at this point in time is kind of cruel and unusual punishment because they're stuck between a rock and a hard place. They don't know what to do, how to do it, and they're being held up with this deposit of some amount of money in the event of. So we need to come up with a solution for them, and nothing we do or anything we do to change the way things have been and start with new development projects, it's going to be a piecemeal kind of a thing, because we're not going to, just because we change the code and the requirements for that 4-foot or 5-foot or 6-foot setback for potential walking path or whatever, or DG permeable for the bikes to skid on or whatever. It's only going to be on the new development. It's not going to be, every resident along Atherton Avenue is going to have to rip out what they've got and redo it, correct? It's sort of like when Menlo Park decided to put in sidewalks along a street that Middle Avenue. And it was just when you did upgrades, significant upgrades to your property, you had to pay to have a little section of sidewalk and a curb. And so you'd be going along on these sidewalks, and then all of a sudden there's landscaping. And so that's the way it's going to be. It's not going to be pretty. Doesn't it sound terrible?
But that's not right. We were going to do bike lanes on Selby Lane on the entire street. That was ripping out.
That's not.
So
That's not what we're talking about today.
That's in the
That's not what
master
the
plan.
ordinance says today.
Yeah.
But that-
Right
But we
now-
have a developer that's being held up, and we need a solution. Okay?
I agree with you. Atherton Avenue right now is that. I mean, you'll have one lot that's dirt, and then the next lot, it's loose gravel. Then the next lot, it's grass. So we already have a very, we don't
Checkerboard
have
thing.
rules. And
Yeah.
so it's already very wild. And so I think Atherton Avenue, I live off of Atherton Avenue. I ride my bike on it all the time. I walk on it all the time. There are so many people who use it as a walking path, as a bike path. It is a very, very, very well traveled multimodal corridor already. And it's also used by massive construction trucks. And we are expected to share with these huge trucks. So asking the new construction to put a surface that is safe for pedestrians and for bikes who get run off the road, as we come up with our interim solution, seems like such a wild request when they're already redoing their frontage. So asking them, hey, you're redoing your frontage, have it look like this, instead of just anything goes, seems like such a very simple way for us to increase safety.
So we have to decide what it's going to look like. Is it 3 feet or 5 feet, or if it, it's all DG? Rex, come back. Yes. Yes, of
I
course.
don't know when I'm allowed to
Join in
come
the
again.
conversation.
I just want to be abundantly clear. We are more than happy to do whatever is needed, and we totally understand how crazy that corridor is, especially from, let's call it 7:30 to 5 o'clock every day.
That's
and
all
it needs-
day. I mean,
8 o'clock to 5
okay.
o'clock. And we need it to be safe, and it should be safe, and we're more than happy to do anything. The thing, again, just to kind of circle back, is when we were carving out the requirements and figuring out what to do, it was a huge encroachment towards the property line. And that, again, it kind of raised some red flags. We're like, okay, we're doing this, and sometime in the next 4 to 10 years, let's say, the rest of it gets done. And it would totally transform Alameda to El Camino, to where we intuitively thought the residents would just raise their arms up at it. And what was
Well,
that?
you're
Yeah.
right, you're right, because
So-
the public right of way is very broad. It's
Yeah.
very wide along Atherton Avenue.
Yeah.
It's not like, but again, that is public property. It is public right of
Oh,
way.
yeah. No, I know that. And if what was being requested of us had been officially approved and voted on, no objection, because we know that it eventually happened. Our concern was we put 400 grand into this work, and 5 years later they go, nobody, the ultimate improvement actually rips all that out, pulls it back out. And we just thought that that's kind of ludicrous, to be honest. It's a little bit absurd. So without getting the details of all of it, yes, what was being requested of us absolutely makes it safer and all these things. And that's absolutely great. And we're fine doing it. But what we were learning was that nobody really understood what this, not to mention the cost. Like, there are estimates from 10 years ago or 8 years ago that were in the $15 million range. I would wager it's 3 times that now. So where do the funds come from for $50 million of bike lane improvements on Atherton Avenue? That's, and then if it's approved 5 years from now, maybe it's 75 million. I'm not going to conjecture on that, but the point is that it wasn't fully approved, discussed amongst you guys. It was in a master plan, kind of got baked in with probably 500 other things. And that's when, we spoke with Mr. DeGolia and you, I think at one point, Ms. Lewis, and
To go, yeah.
yeah, and just said, listen, we're fine doing anything. It's just, I think you guys need to know what's going on, so that's that.
All right, Diana.
Yeah.
Just like to
Okay. Yes, come on up. Yes, Mary Lou.
Listening to all
Yes.
of this, I'm Selby Lane resident.
Yes.
I'm not sure, and I just want it clarified. If you put in walkways or if you put in bicycle lanes, where do people park? If I'm looking at a house on Selby Lane, okay, and what they have in front of them as far as public property, you're talking about even putting in sidewalks? cars, construction would park right on top of the sidewalks. Is that allowed? Or if you put in bicycle lanes and sidewalks, the only place there would be to park would be on, right on top of these. Is that allowed? Is that going to be allowed? Chief McCauley. It's hard for, I don't want it. I moved to Atherton because they do not have sidewalks. I've been here 45, and I'm old and I walk all the time. So I don't see a problem if you're paying attention.
Comments.
Sorry, that's all. But the question, can you answer the question about where you park if you put in? Thank you.
No, you don't park on sidewalks.
Sidewalk.
We have
Would
no
you like
sidewalks.
staff- would you
Diana,
like
you were
staff-
going to have another question or
Would you like
comment,
staff to
and then we
address
need
that
it.
question, though?
Yes,
Would you like staff to address
yes,
that?
yes.
So I'm going to say that there are a couple of different choices. I think I'll give a couple of examples. As you drive down Atherton Avenue, there are a couple of properties that have what appear to be walkways, and they're not exactly adjacent to the gutter. They actually meander closer to the property line. I think that there may be some flexibility as long if you say you want that walkway, that we can allow that. There's going to have to be some
For parking. Parking.
meandering around existing heritage trees, because we're going to want to try and protect those as well. And then if a resident wants to have parking in front of that new development, I think that can be accommodated. I think the only request that we would have is that if we want that walkway, it be located behind the parking. Or in the interim, if you want that whole area to be a mixed, call it a mixed zone between parking and pedestrian, that's going to be up to the discretion of the council.
Well, these are all interesting concepts to discuss, and maybe we can discuss it at another, we're not going to make decisions on it at this point, but
You're providing direction to it.
right, to kind of come back with those ideas. Yes, but I would like to kind of come to a consensus for a solution to this developer. Why they've been asked to do something that really had not been approved by council.
That's not true.
The park master plan, the drainage master plan, the bike and ped master plan, their master plans, their policy doc. Staff uses those as we projects forward. So site developments are required, particularly subdivisions, are required to make improvements in the way consistent with whatever master plan applies to that.
Diana,
I just wanted to express.
and then you.
I agree
Right,
with
comments.
Rick that it's too early for us to discuss 5 feet, 10 feet and decisions around the bike thing, because we don't even know where that's going. So I think it's way too early to talk about that. On the other hand, I do think that we can discuss what we put in the first 3 feet and whether we allow loose gravel and dangerous surfaces. That doesn't affect anyone. If we say new people go in, they should not be able to do those, it should be whatever the language is. I don't want to make it so restrictive that you can't do stuff, but I want it so that you can ride your bicycle there, you can ride a wheelchair there, you can ride a stroller there in the first 3 feet right next to the gutter. So I think that if we currently have no rules around that other than that the height, so I would pose that we do think about making some safety in that first 3 feet. And that's something we can do now, and that's something that should maybe be true everywhere.
I'm just going to give you something to think about, but that would preclude the meandering type of concept, which I think they should flesh out and bring us back.
There's got to
Okay?
be exceptions,
Okay,
obviously, for
yeah.
trees and for all the
Yeah,
things we just
yeah.
said, yeah.
Okay. Councilmember Whitmer.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I agree with what Diana's saying, but I more so agree with Rick's suggestion that when we get the bike ped plan back, really fully address this, good to get us thinking about it. As I said, I'm not interested in 10-foot setback. I've heard from 2 people and thought about it myself. I don't think pushing 10 feet back is going to well accept it, and I'm not sure it's necessary on. So.
Okay.
Don't know what we're gonna do on Selby Lane. We don't know what we're gonna do on Atherton Ave, although that will probably be designated. Or at this point in time, I think that we should just table it. Gotten some input, and we should table it and move on to the last item.
Get enough? Did we give you
So
direction
if that's the
Yeah.
direction, the rules stay exactly as they are
right now?
right
Yes.
now. And for all new development to include 170 Atherton, all they've got to do is the 3 feet to 3.
Right,
Exactly.
They
exactly.
can build
Yeah.
infrastructure within that front
Yes,
property line. So we're all
But
clear on that.
That's
Based
until-
on
fine.
the current rules.
based on the current rules.
Until the council identifies routes and
So
That
nobody's
way.
interested in making sure that the first 3 feet are at least,
Not
Not
right
at
now,
this
Safe?
not at this time. I don't. Okay,
I'd like to see it, but I'm not gonna
Yeah.
die on my sword there.
not, you shouldn't. Okay, thank you. All right.
They're probably the only.
Yeah, developing right now. Thank you so much, Robert. Excellent work. More to be done. We look forward to hearing more from you later.
you won't hear it again until the bike ped master plan, just so we're clear.
But I know, but that's in process. The transportation,
sure
the
that's
bike
clear.
ped
Sooner the better.
transportation committee is going to hear it
Let's
first.
just say at the
Okay.
next item.
Yeah.
that we're
So
gonna have-
item number 9, item
Supports.
number 9 is to review and approve legislative correspondence. City manager is wanting us to send a letter of opposition to the,
It's good.
it was Councilmember Widmer's idea.
Yes, it was.
And so I know that at
Appreciate
CCAG,
Overheard that.
does letters like this all the time. In your packet, there's 2 letters, one for SB 79 and one for SB 677. SB 677 did not pass committee. We talked with the CCAG lobbyist, and so we're not going to send that one. The other one, SB 79, will likely be amended, but I think it's okay for us to sign and send this letter of opposition having to do with facilitating high-density residential development near major public transit stops, et cetera, et cetera.
And then
And-
there's a general correspondence letter as well.
Oh, yes, yes, okay. So any discussion on that? Anybody have opinions on that?
Opinion, send it. Sign and send.
Good.
Anybody else? I'll make a motion to sign and send. Yes?
Second it.
Public comments. Oh, yes. Any members of the public want to make a comment on signing legislative letters opposing SB 79 and then a general opposition? Any on, okay, thank you. Okay, I'll bring it back. I'll make a motion to do that. May I get a second? A second by Councilmember Widmer. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? No? Any abstentions? The motion passes and we will go ahead and sign the letters and send them off. Thank you very much. And is there any other items on the council agenda that anybody wants to talk about? Council reports or future agenda items?
I'll give you.
Good.
Okay.
2
so
minutes.
For those of you who have been in the park, you saw that the fountain has been rebuilt. It's not operating yet, but next week, there was some
haven't seen
last minute with the pump, but looking pretty good.
Cool.
The city is having a small fence put around the inside of water capture area to try and deter people from climbing on it. Caused the break last time. But it looks good. I think Foundation did a good job. Covered the cost of that.
Great. Thank you
Great.
very much. All right. Anybody else? No? Okay. Call this meeting adjourned.